Hey folks, Malforian here, and welcome back to the channel. No dev diary today for Crusader Kings 3, but we have got the changelog for the patch that was released today, which is patch 1.9.1, our first patch after Tours and Tournaments was released. A lot of balance fixes in here, a lot of bug fixes. There's a crazy amount of bug fixes in this patch, and there's some other free content and all that stuff in here, so it's not going to be too long of a video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, but we're just going to get straight into the patch notes. And the first thing here is they've added a new set of clothing for Western high nobility characters. So I guess another set of clothing. I guess they just had it like in their back pocket and they were like, oh, we might as well throw it in a week or two after Tours and Tournaments came out. So yeah, some additional clothing, which is great. And then free features. This was covered in last week's dev diary, basically, for the most part. So again, the points of interest travel system. If you didn't see what that is, you basically earn some bonus lifestyle points, some prestige, things like that, based on your route of whatever you're doing. So if you're going on a pilgrimage and say go past the pyramids, you gain some prestige for having visited the pyramids, and you get some lifestyle experience as well for doing so, based on what kind of building, or if it's a natural wonder. Even going to Kingdom or Empire capitals, as it says, will give you some lifestyle bonus based on the kind of court it is. So a pretty nice bonus just for doing what you were pretty much doing anyway. But it does make you think about where you might go on a trip somewhere. You might actually deviate the route a little bit more when you're paying homage or something to go through a special building or something like that. Added foreboding events. These are basically ones where you can get some harm or death random events. Again, that was covered in last week's dev diary, which I've got on the channel if you're interested and you haven't watched that or read up last week. Added incapability harm events, which risk the character being forcefully made incapable whilst receiving a suitably foreboding event, again, covered last week. Death harm events, which risk characters dying before their time and receiving a suitable foreboding event as well. Again, this was covered last week. A lot of feedback in last week's video about people looking forward to this, really, about having a bit more randomization, people not dying in their 60s or 70s all the time. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to this, but as they mentioned last week, and they do mention it in a second, actually, in these patch notes, you can turn this off, you can turn it up, you can make them crazy powerful and things like that. So if you're not really down for these kind of events, you can just turn them off and it doesn't matter. So it's cool they've added that. And again, commander harm events where you can risk dying due to being in the incorrect terrain. If you're not a specialist in desert, you can have some desert events where it can obviously harm you because you're not used to being in a desert. Again, just things to kind of spice up just general gameplay. Added a new game rule controlling targets of harm events. Just the AI, just the player or both. So again, you can just turn them off for yourself, you can turn them off for the AI, so it's just you, or you can just turn it off for everyone, which is, like I say, pretty cool, that level of control you have over it. Added a decision for Jewish cultural heads to adopt Hebrew as the culture's language. A nice change. You can adopt Hebrew, and then obviously you're the cultural head, so most people are going to convert over to that language. Converted the Crusader random event for Faith Reformation into a full break with the old ways decision. So just an additional thing you've got there. Jewish faiths now have a Halakha authority main doctrine with 4 types: Rabbinic, Toraic, Karenimic, and Samaritan. I apologize for butchering one or all of those pronunciations. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but again, just additional things in there, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to get onto the balance. This is basically decimating certain prestige bonuses. As we all said when the dev diaries were coming out before the launch of Tours and Tournaments, some of these buffs are pretty insane, and yeah, they've already realized that, and a lot of them are getting changed. So contemplative pilgrimages now give 25% bonus piety instead of 50, so nerfing those. Dynamic goal values using events, decisions, and other content now have max caps based on era. This means that, for example, the major gold value will not cap out at 500 gold in the mid-late game, where such an amount of gold would be trivial. This makes rulers with very high incomes both pay and receive relevant sums of gold in the mid-late game. The new values are 25% less in Tribal Era, unchanged in Early Medieval, 50% higher in High Medieval, and 300% in Late Medieval, making a little bit more of a gold sink out of these events to kind of siphon out some of the gold from the economy, basically. Because as we know, getting gold late game is pretty easy, so again, just making them a little bit more expensive. Grand Wedding Activity Option Prestige Rewards reduced by 25%. I thought they were pretty good. I guess they are kind of overpowered, but I don't know. Let me know how often you do Grand Weddings. It's fair enough. It's only 25% reduced, so it's nothing too crazy. Vassal acceptance of tour demands now consider more factors such as disloyal, loyal traits, opinion, honor, greed, etc. Kind of surprised it didn't already, but there we go. It'll kind of make them accept them a bit more based on their personality rather than, I guess, they generally just said yes or no based on your opinion and didn't really take these other things into account as much. And I know this next one is a big one for a lot of players who play in Iberia. So characters involved in the Iberian struggle are now allowed to take the hostile ending if they completely control Iberia and their primary title is at least a kingdom they have held for 5 years or more. This can be done regardless of the current phase. I know this was a big sticking point in the community because you could basically take over all of Iberia, control it all, and you could just never end the struggle because of the requirements. So yeah, this basically means if you take it all over, then you hold at least a kingdom title for it all. You're probably going to make the empire, to be honest, at that point, but I guess maybe you wouldn't for some reason. You can now, after 5 years, just finish it in the hostility ending, and you're done with the struggle. It just ends and never comes back. Increased tyranny incurred from refusing to pay homage by 1 to 2, and thus vassal opinion lost to 1. So just a little bit of a change if you don't pay homage. It's now valid to petition your liege for a fellow vassal's capital title. Lowered reward prestige from tours by 50%. By 50%. They nerfed tours by 50% for prestige. That's a big change, but again, let me know what you think. A lot of these are pretty sizable reductions, but I think they were kind of way too high before, so I'm sure they'll tune it back up a little bit if it's a little bit too low, but I'm not too fussed at 50%. Taxation tours now give 50% less reward prestige on top of the new 50% reduction. So taxation tours, in theory, give you 25% of the prestige they used to give you, which is a lot. But again, taxation tours are there really to get money out of your vassals and things like that. So should you really be getting a lot of prestige, especially if you're going around basically, you know, shaking the can and saying, give me some money? Is that really that prestigious a thing to be doing? So I don't think so. Lowered average renown gain from tours. Again, as we were talking through the earlier dev diaries, some of the renown stacking you could do was pretty crazy, so that's going to lower that as well. Lowered the chance of becoming a drunkard in a specific wedding event significantly. A bit less drunken uncle events and things like that going on. Weddings, I guess a cool change. I guess it was happening a lot. I haven't actually noticed this in my campaigns, but I guess it was happening a lot. Lowered the frequency, the feral child events, and made the cooldown of getting again much higher. Another one that I've not noticed myself, but visiting the Reddit, I have noticed a lot of memes around this. So yeah, I think you could just get the feral child event way too often. So yeah, cutting it back a bit makes a lot of sense. Made certain events where you could get a recruit knight appear in more locales during tournaments. That's not too bad. I was just about to say, if you go on a lot of like pay homage, if you go on a lot of trips, I find that pretty much at least once on every trip you get an event where you get a knight, unless you're playing against that type of, you know, if you're a callous character, you generally won't get them, but if you're honorable or compassionate, you generally, I think, find you get at least one knight during most travels from the events, but it looks like you're going to get more of a chance in the locales during tournaments. So if you go to, you know, the village and things like that, you're more likely to get a knight, which I guess makes sense. It's at a tournament where there's a lot of knights, so I guess it's more thematic that you would bump into someone, maybe say, hey, do you want to come join my realm and things like that. So pretty nice change. Players with a trusting trait will no longer give out hooks via feast APAs, as there is no way of avoiding them. Well, that's good. That's good. That is very good. Rebalance the modifiers gained in the Tour Travel 3010 events so that you won't get fooled by the green-red colours. I'm not 100% sure what that one's on about, but it sounds like a good change. Reduce the vassal opinion gain from the number of courses in Feast, roughly -5 in each level. Joe, that is actually a pretty good change because you could turn around vassal opinion really quick with Feast. And obviously that is the point of Feast for a lot of players. Obviously the prestige gain as well and things like that now. Murder Feast, obviously less so. But yeah, you could turn a vassal opinion around really quick by just maxing out the number of courses and things like that, which is pretty expensive. And obviously the later game is going to be even more expensive. But again, I think it makes sense it was lowered. Reduced the frequency of appropriate clothing event and made the cooldown longer, so you're just not going to see that event quite as often. Slashed siege percent modifiers in buildings in half to reduce the speed of late game sieges somewhat. I'm going to be honest, I've not played that much late game since the patch came out. If you're watching the Sardinians campaign that we're doing on the channel, we're not that far into it. I think we're in like 1140, maybe not even that far into the game. And I haven't actually played much further than that in my own time either. So let me know. I'm guessing it was just so quick you could siege somewhere down before someone could react. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I'd rather it was a little bit slower so you can have some strategic interplay with what people are doing, and it's not just, oh, they've got to my capital and they've sieged it down in like 2 months because they've just stacked all the modifiers and buildings. So I'm down for this. It's good. I don't like where you can siege things too quick. It doesn't really make sense thematically, I don't think. Slightly reduce the prestige gain from dish complexity and feast by 25%. As you can see, 25 or 50% is the common theme here. The era cost increase for activities cost is now much sharper, unchanged in tribal and early feudal, 50% in high medieval, and 300% higher in late medieval. So again, activity costs going to be priced the same amount as the dynamic gold used in other events and decisions and things, so they've both kind of matched now and go up a lot steeper endgame. The pilgrimage piety bonus from the humble or ceremonial options is now 100 instead of 250, lowering that piety. And again, the pilgrimage piety bonus from throng option is now 250 instead of 500. 500's a lot, so yeah, it's not surprising that got halved. There are now 5 tournament prize options: simple, decent, fine, good, and splendid. And basically, there's less chance of getting illustrious artifacts unless you pick the later 2. I almost would say this should be scaled back even more, because I find you get a lot of quite decent artifacts from doing well in tournaments. Now, I know doing well in tournaments isn't like super easy, but some of the artifacts you get are crazy good. I suppose if you're hosting a splendid tournament, it's costing you a lot of money, so I guess it kind of makes sense there would be good artifact as a reward for, obviously not yourself, generally the people who win the actual tournaments themselves, obviously. But yeah, I'm not too mad about this. I almost think illustrious should be only for the last one, because again, you can get some illustrious artifacts quite easily, I find, from this. Again, let me know in the comments if you disagree there. Tour stop costs are now scaled in cost per era, as all other activities cost, so tours are just going to cost you more money, basically, as they go around. Tribal rulers can no longer go on taxation tours. It's kind of surprising this ever made it in, to be honest. It doesn't really make that much sense, does it, as a tribal ruler? I wonder if something should take its place, though. Like, tribal rulers could go on a... I don't know how to frame it, but, like, you could boost your levies, maybe, for, like, 5 years, go on some kind of tour where you're, like, whipping up the boys and be like, yeah, let's go raid somewhere, let's go do something, let's go, boys. And they're all like, yeah, let's do it, let's leave the farms behind, let's go on a crazy raiding pillage or something. I think that would be pretty cool to replace it. Maybe that will come in the future, or they could add it to the Northman DLC. That would be awesome, actually, if they did that. But it'd be cool if you had that kind of thing where you could go around and just, like, whip everyone up and be like, yeah, let's go raid the HRE or something. And then you just go on a crazy adventure with them all. But unfortunately not, but that would be cool if they added that. And then water mills, windmills, and caravanserai buildings can now only be constructed in county capitals to avoid insane development growth stacking. Who would have thought that would be an option when we saw the buffs they were giving? They can also be built in counties where any county province matches their terrain requirements. This obviously makes sense because they've limited it now to county capitals only. If they didn't allow it to also count the terrain requirements in the province, it would cut down the locations you could build this to a crazy amount. So it's cool they've thought about that and thought, well, we can't just limit it to county capital terrain, because there's probably very few county capitals that would then allow you to build these buildings. Expanding it out to the province increases that somewhat. So I think this is good. The development growth stacking was obvious. I'm not even sure again how this made it into the game, but it's good they fixed it so quickly. Workshops now give slightly less speed for sieging. Again, kind of matches with that one earlier, reducing that somewhat. You can now petition your liege for claims held by subvassals. This is actually a really cool change. I didn't even think about this before, actually. If this wasn't in here, I probably would never even think about this, but it's really cool that you can now get claims from subvassals if you want from your liege, or you can try to at least. Reduce the general opinion threshold required for characters to consider cheating to low positives or early negatives for somewhat honourable characters. Added a second tier of honour checks for dishonourable characters, so they'll consider cheating as close to, but with a little reduced from, the older, higher opinion threshold, drastically lowering the threshold for any character to cheat regardless of the honour in the high minuses. That's a lot of words. That's a lot of words. I guess it's just going to reduce the amount of cheating in things, I guess, is the gist of that whole sentence. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Reduce the high penalty in the incapable trait so we can all spend a little bit longer enjoying the care of our regions. This is such a good change, obviously tagged in with the new events that are coming. We're probably going to see a lot more incapable characters. It's good that they're going to live a little longer in a slightly less useful state, I guess. Probably not for us playing them, but again, it kind of makes sense that you basically become incapable and then die pretty quickly. So it's good that they're actually extending that a little bit. Well, again, it could be seen as a good change. It could be seen as a bad change. You kind of want to get to your next character quite quickly, but it also kind of makes sense that they don't just immediately pretty much die. So yeah, nice change, I think. I like the smiley face. I think they kind of know this is a sarcastic entry almost, but we'll see. Anyway, we're on to AI. The AI will no longer send children to university unless they're very rich. So it will mean characters will have a little bit more money. They're not just doing it by default, basically. The AI will now very often revoke titles from traitorous vassals with less than zero opinion of them that they have in their prison unless they are very compassionate, non-greedy, or honourable. Again, this is a cool change. We're going to see them revoking more titles. They've got to be in the prison, so it's not going to go crazy. They've obviously got to have like captured them or something like that to have them in the prison, and then they would do this. So it's not just going to spam revocations constantly, but it's a good change. You know, it's the kind of thing you would do as a player, so it's good to see the AI will do it a little bit more. Vengeful rulers now more often revoke titles from vassal prisoners, kind of matches the one above, really. You know, if they're vengeful, they're just going to be like, oh, you're in my prison? I'm going to take your titles, thank you very much. Kind of like the player plays, if we're being honest. Now, there's a bunch of interface changes here. We're not going to read through every one of them. A lot of them are pretty just self-explanatory. There's nothing too crazy about them. The core position interface has been updated. Caravan Master speed safety contribution shown when hiring. There's a lot of things where it's just like, oh, it's cool that that will now show there. So there's some really good ones here as well. Adding a setting to turn off realms being named after dynasties. This is actually a really cool one. I do like, I guess, that the realms do get named after dynasties. But sometimes when there's a lot of them, kind of, I don't know, lose your place in the world. I don't know how to kind of word it, but I think I prefer in some campaigns to have the real country names on the map for whatever reason. So it's a cool change. Again, you can turn it on or off, so and have it however you like. Activity invitation confirmation has got an updated visual, so just some nice extra visuals. And then, yeah, like I say, the rest of them are just kind of general changes, just small improvements here or there that were kind of missed off, I guess, or they couldn't get into the main patch before it was done. So, yeah, nothing too crazy. Again, I will leave, as always, a link to these in the description so you can read through them yourself if you haven't already. But there's a bunch of stuff there, which is pretty nice little changes, just little bits here and there. Art added eyes to many animals on coat of arms. Well, I'll have to look. I wonder if they're googly eyes. That would be awesome, especially if it was a setting, or maybe just on April 1st to just put googly eyes on all the coat of arms. I'd like that. Many people probably wouldn't, but I'm a simple man. Added simpler variants for early era clothing for commoners and unlanded characters, so they're not going to have quite as fashionable blingy clothes if they're commoners or unlanded, which makes a lot of sense. Made it possible to combine crowns with other headgear. This is actually a really cool change. For now, only veils for female Western characters, I guess because a lot of the new stuff was based on Western characters, that's why it's that case. This will now happen dynamically in the game as well, so that duchesses and queens will wear a veil combined with their crown. I like this, it's a cool change. Obviously, I would expect when the Persia DLC comes out later in the year, all the clothes that come with that and things, I would imagine will have the same system, or basically everything going forwards will have this. Hopefully they do retrospectively go back and change some of the other ones, but we'll see. Probably quite a lot of work, so it's probably just going forwards maybe that we'll see these implemented. Made the Iberian helmets a bit more common. Also made the HRE armor show up a little bit earlier, and the Chainmail coif should now show up as well. So just some extra armor options that were a little bit less visible in the game. They weren't being used that much, make them a little bit more. Updated all bookmark characters to basically match how they look in game and on the bookmark screen. I guess they weren't directly attached, so they did look slightly different, I presume. I've never noticed it myself, but I guess that was happening. Updated Balislav II the Bold with historically accurate beard with a mustache. So he's getting his beard and mustache as he should have had. Major update to bookmark characters to use a bigger selection of accessories. They're going to look, again, a little bit different. Multiple clothing, headgear, hairstyle, and cloak improvements to alleviate clipping issues. So a little bit less clipping. Improved zealous animation pose to alleviate clipping issues. You know, I'm not even sure what the pose is, but I guess it was clipping pretty badly. Added late-era Western war nobility legwear to the barbershop. Added a new version of the female Western era 3 clothes. I wonder if that is what they were talking about in the beginning. I guess this is an additional extra bit of clothing and not just the one they mentioned at the top. So again, just more tidying up the art, adding a little bit here, making something show up that weren't so much before. So all good changes. Localization, not even going to cover. It's just fix some things. Game content added contest pivotal moments, outcomes, tooltips, as they were not telegraphed before, so you get to see a little bit more information. Added the Heroes of Our Time Feast event about Acclaimed Knights. It's actually pretty cool. I almost think this should be called out further at the top. There's basically a new feast event where I guess you're like, hey, these are all my Acclaimed Knights. Look how cool they are. They're heroes of our time. And I guess they get maybe prestige or something like that. So cool. It's just basically an extra feast event for free as part of the patch. User modding. If you do mod, there's some improvements here. Databases. Just a bunch of like little fixes here and there. So upgraded tournament background image. Updated the Israelite culture languages. And just some other little things in there. Some Jewish faith changes again. So it looks like there's a bit of a pass on Jewish things because there's some more Judaism things down here as well. So yeah, looks like somebody did a bit of a pass on there and made some improvements. And yeah, that's basically it for the databases. And then, as I said, for the bug fixes, I'm not going to read all these because this is how many there are. There's all these. There's all these. There's all these. There's all these, and there's all them. So there's a lot of bug fixes. I don't think there's anything too crazy in here. There's some cool changes in here. A lot of things are just bug fixes that obviously make a lot of sense and just some little changes here or there. So that is basically the patch notes for 1.9.1. A pretty decent patch size, and I'm kind of surprised that we got these free features so quickly because it was only last week's dev diary, and I thought it'd be a couple of weeks away, but nope, straight away, here we go. A week later, we've got this patch, so some cool changes in here. Let me know in the comments down below maybe what your favorite changes or something you didn't like in here. But overall, I think I'm happy with them. The balance changes I think were needed. Some of these events were pretty crazy. And, you know, all the other little changes just add up, so they're all good changes. And we'll see what comes next week. I'm not sure if there will be a dev diary next week. I don't think they said, actually. I think they just said that is the patch notes. They didn't even say that. They just ended the post. So yeah, we'll see what's happened next week, if there's a dev diary or not. I'm not sure when we'll get our first kind of look at the next DLC. I suppose it's going to be the Wards and Wardens event pack. So I'm not sure if we'll get a lot of info before it happens. And then obviously there's the Persia flavor pack later in the year. So I doubt we're going to get news about that anytime soon. So we'll see what news is announced next week. If not, we might do some other random videos. So hit like if you've enjoyed the video today. If you're new here, I cover the dev diaries. I play narrative campaigns and achievement runs on the channel. And then I also cover other historical titles as well. So if that's your kind of thing, hit subscribe. But we're going to leave it there for today. And I'll see you in the next one.